Right, so there's a message that I really want to try to get across about the trade war, about China and the US, that you're not hearing anywhere else. Okay, I think this is crucial for my part. So try to listen. So the point is that China's China's strength in this trade war consists in their control of information. Okay, if China's economy, say, is right on the brink of collapse right now, they can get away with it for a while because they can lie about it, they can disguise it, right? Because the CCP controls all the flows of information, right? So GDP, population levels, levels of GDP growth, levels of unemployment, levels of inflation, they can all be lied about, right? The CCP has it in their power to disguise the true levels on all of those things, right? Because they control all information flows. Everyone's dependent on them for information. Meanwhile, they can artificially prop up the yuan. They can sell lots of dollars, buy yuan, right? So they're selling dollars to buy yuan, so they're making the yuan stronger, making the dollar drop, because they flood the market with dollars. The state subsidizes industries, right? So essentially you've got formally independent, effectively state dependent, right? You've got sort of, state monopoly cartels masquerading as a free market. So China will massively subsidize its industries to keep them upright for the time being. Because they don't care about free markets ultimately, right? Free markets are a means to an end for them. It's not something they really believe in. So, for these reasons, people who actually want to know what's going on in China, who actually want to know, what the condition of China's economy is, you can't just trust what the CCP tells you. You have to look at proxies, right? We have to look at things like road traffic, right? See if road traffic has gone down, right? In order that you can estimate, decreased trade. So the problem with this strategy of China's is that before long, it runs up against natural limits, right? Because it depends on massive spending, right? Massive spending in order to buy the yuan, to prop up their own currency, massive spending on subsidies. It simply can't go on forever, right? They're printing money like crazy, they're borrowing like crazy, and at some point the inflation and the debt can no longer be disguised and can no longer be sustained, okay? At that point they crash, they can't avoid crashing. For that reason, China's strategy depends on Trump failing soon, owing to a crisis of confidence in him, okay? If the US loses this trade war, it will not be because their economy is weaker. It isn't. Their economy is objectively stronger. It's a larger economy with a lower population, which is less export dependent. China's whole economy is structured for export. The US has a much larger domestic market, so they're much less vulnerable to trade wars. So with a stronger economy in the first place, they're much less vulnerable to trade wars. So if they lose this trade war and China wins, it is not because the US economy is weaker. It's not the US economy that's going to fail. It will be a crisis of confidence, okay? That's very important. Right, so, the markets get jittery, right? The markets get a bit hysterical. The markets are always hysterical. The dollar goes down, right? So, Liz Truss tried to do something slightly outside the box, right? What happened? She was out of power within months, right? The markets freaked out on her. And everybody lost confidence in her very rapidly. So this strategy of China's to produce a crisis of confidence in Trump in order that people will lose confidence in him, as they did in Truss. This strategy is massively assisted by the hysterically anti-Trump Western media, especially the US and British media, because it's English language, right? Even the financial press are ideologically biased against Trump and his strategy. They are literally siding with Sino-Bolshevism against liberal democracy because Trump is at the helm of liberal democracy, right? I've been watching Bloomberg. I've been watching that idiot Rory Stewart on the Rest is Politics podcast. I've been seeing the FT, right? It's all left centrist ideology that they're putting out, right? They are siding with Sino-Bolshevism against liberal democracy because, Trump is at the helm of liberal democracy. How crazy is that? So Xi's strength consists in control of information, which upholds faith in China, with the downside of that being that he's surrounded by yes men and there's no open criticism, right? So Xi is really going for this trade war in spite of the fact that his economy is weaker. He's gambling a hell of a lot, and it's all about saving face, right? He's surrounded by yes men who are not really telling him the truth about how serious a threat this trade war is to the economy. Trump's weakness, by contrast, is precisely open information flows, right? Which make it fair game in the West to undermine confidence in him. And the positive side of that is that he is open to criticism, right? Which makes him capable of flexibility, which we saw with the 90-day pause to calm the markets down because they're flipping out. We saw his flexibility in accepting smartphones from higher tariffs because that might affect popularity rates, right? So the question comes down to, will Western openness destroy confidence in Trump fast enough to save China, where confidence in China is secured only temporarily by closed information flows, right? If Trump loses, it won't be because the US economy is weaker, it is evidently stronger. It will be because of a politico-culturally engineered crisis of confidence, right? So you get the stock market going down. You get people leaving US bonds, right, out of a crisis of confidence. Flight, therefore, into gold, into euros, into the yen, into the British gilt. So the West's weakness lies, therefore, on the cultural level, right? Its weakness is its cultural openness. What Trump is trying to do is good for the West, right? The things that he's concerned with respect to China are fentanyl, right? Currency manipulation on the part of China, the anti-competition measures that I mentioned earlier, right? The effective state monopolies, anti-competition measures, intellectual property theft, right? What Trump wants to do, his objective is to force them to stop doing these things. It's not that Trump wants to, go back to a 1950s type manufacturing economy, right? And it's not that we're in like a new era of protectionism now, and the idea is that we stay there forever. It's a temporary trade war designed to force China into concessions on those issues, in order that we can then, trade with China on a better basis. And was Trump to succeed, it would benefit the whole of the West, okay? Not only the US, but the West in general, because these unfair anti-free market Chinese practices affect the whole West, right? So Western industry, European industry would be in a better position following China's defeat in the trade war than they are in now, okay? It's conceived as a short-term trade war in order to force China to terms. Western media doesn't talk about this, right? They constantly caricature Trump's objective. All of those sources that I mentioned, along with all the other mainstream ones, right? Because they're hysterically anti-Trump, they always misrepresent his position. They caricature it as an attempt to return to a manufacturing economy like in the 1950s, or as, the beginning of a new regime of long-term protectionism. These are not the objective, right? But by caricaturing Trump, they contribute to creating the crisis of confidence, which is the only thing that Sino-Bolshevism has to hope for if it wants to defeat the West in this trade war. So you on the left and centre are effectively conspiring and colluding with Sino-Bolshevism against liberal democracy. You're stabbing the West in the back, okay? America's victory would benefit the rest of the world vis-a-vis China, not only the US, if China can be stopped from those measures that it uses. So the left and centre think that what they're doing here is preventing the rise of fascism by undermining Trump, okay? What they're actually showing is that fascism is inevitable and necessary, okay? Because what they're showing up is the fact that the West's weakness is its cultural openness, right? If the West loses this trade war vis-a-vis China, it is going to be because of the cultural openness which was allowed to create a crisis of confidence in Trump, whereas China, with its completely closed information flows, was able to disguise its weakness, okay? So by stabbing Trump in the back and actually siding with Sino-Bolshevism against him, you are exposing the fact that the West's weakness is its cultural openness, is its free press, okay? So this actually tends to make fascism more likely, because you are revealing the fact that the West needs to close down its information flows, right? That the West needs to become more authoritarian like China, because these open information flows are just used against anybody who tries to do something that's in the interest of the West. So, yeah, you might be familiar with the stab in the back myth, okay, from the period after the First World War. So the stab in the back myth was that Germany didn't lose militarily in the First World War. It was stabbed in the back by the left centre, by the Social Democrats. So the home front stabbed the Western Front in the back, right? Germany was not militarily defeated. It's the home front gave in, right, on behalf of the army, and of course this was after the SDs had come into power in 1918. So this is generally regarded as a myth, right? It's generally believed that Germany's position militarily was untenable by that time. So it would have made no difference if, that they would have lost anyway. But the point that I'm trying to make here is that you leftists, by stabbing the West in the back, culturally, right, ideologically, and this applies to the whole Western left-centrist media, including the financial press, by stabbing the West in the back, you are not creating a stab-in-the-back myth, you're creating a stab-in-the-back fact, right? You're showing, that you're showing the right that they need to close information flows, because open information flows are not used to, make sure that everybody has access to the truth. They're used ideologically, right? They're used as an ideological instruments or ideological weapons to undermine Trump, largely out of hysteria. So just as the National Socialists of the 1920s claimed the Home Front stabbed the Western Front and the military in the back in 1918, the National Socialists of the 2020s will point out truthfully that Western liberal culture stabbed the Western economy in the back in 2025. If China wins, it's a victory for closed society, right? Especially for closed information flows, for controlled media, and it's a victory over the open society with freer information flows. So I just want to say to you on the left and centre, you are crazy for supporting and conspiring with Sino-Bolshevism against liberal democracy. You're liberal Democrats, for Christ's sake. Trump's victory in the trade war would benefit the West in general. And Sino-Bolshevism is not, something that you should be preferring ahead of liberal democracy, even when Donald Trump is at the helm of liberal democracy.